A day ago, I asked a bunch of my subscribers which Warriors book cover was their least favorite. Turns out that some Warriors fans have very strong opinions about the book covers. There were many different answers, but in general it seems that people like the new covers less than the original ones. This could have to do with nostalgia, but I have to agree that while the new covers are artistically impressive, they don't really describe the books. So I took it upon myself to redesign the most hated Warriors covers, the ones from the New Prophecy. I'm not planning to properly render them because that would take forever. These are going to be just concepts. A glaring issue with all of these covers is that they are just close-ups of the characters. They don't reveal anything about the contents of the books, except that they have cats in them. I think a good book cover should be intriguing, encouraging people to pick up the book, and accurately portray something about the book while not spoiling anything major. For the first book, Midnight, I chose to draw a scene from the book, the midnight meeting of the main cast. I think the old book cover of Midnight is also portraying this scene, but it's vaguer and you couldn't really tell that it was supposed to be a scene from the book. I decided to make it more obvious than it was. There's an argument to be made here about me spoiling too much of the book's contents by showing the characters that have been chosen to go on the journey, but I would argue that since it happens near the beginning of the book, it's alright to show, especially since it's a bit difficult to tell who they are if you have never read the book. I made them look into the distance to foreshadow the journey ahead of them. As for the cover of Moonrise, I again wanted to portray an actual scene from the book. The problem is that while that is the most memorable part of this book and would undoubtedly draw attention to it, I couldn't just draw Featherdale jumping to her death, because that would be a massive spoiler. I originally wanted to draw Featherdale entering into the cave with Stormfur, but that would probably not be a very interesting cover. Instead, I decided that I'm going to draw Sharptooth. I personally don't think showing Sharptooth is such a huge spoiler, and I actually noticed that the original cover for Moonrise also has Sharptooth in it. It's just not very noticeable. And I kinda like mild spoilers in book covers anyways, because then you spend the whole book wondering about the upcoming event in the cover. It's like a little mystery. Nevertheless, I don't think showing Crowpaw being threatened by Sharptooth is too spoilery, but feel free to tell me what you think. I think the slight spoiler is much better than having an uninteresting cover. The old cover is not as spoilery, but it's just cats in the snow. Oh yeah, I love reading about cats in the snow, my favorite. My version, I feel, has more conflict, so it's a bit more interesting. The cover I made for Dawn is probably my least favorite one. The original old cover depicts the cats arriving at Lakeside territory, which I think makes for a good cover, but again, it's a bit vague. I wanted to depict the forest being destroyed, since that is basically the driving force behind this book. I ended up drawing the scene in which Thunderclan helps evacuate ShadowClan camp. In hindsight, I think this one would be more effective if I had drawn more cats fleeing. While drawing, I also thought of another idea that could have worked. What if I had drawn just a bunch of cats in small cages in a dark room, since that is also a thing that happens in the book? The cover would have been less eventful but more ominous, and I think I'd kinda like that more than what I ended up making. On the Starlight, I decided to draw the moonpool scene. This one could also be a bit of a spoiler, but I think that since the book is called Starlight, it would be fitting to draw a pool full of stars. Especially since the other big scene I could have drawn would be Mudclaw's death, which is definitely too big of a spoiler. The old cover had what is presumably the fight for Windglen, but I didn't want to draw that because there's always a fight in Warrior Cats. It's not anything new or exciting. It's in every book. I like how this cover turned out, and I think I would definitely have a cover like this over either of the real covers. The new covers for New Prophecy are widely disliked, but I also saw someone point out that the old cover of Twilight as their least favorite Warriors book cover. And I can understand that. This cover isn't particularly interesting. It just has Crowfeather and then some cats on some rocks. I suppose that's the new Thunderclan camp. I actually took some inspiration from the German cover for mine. Since Leafpool and Crowfeathers— oh my gosh, Ponzo. Bunch of screaming. You know what, I'm just gonna record over it. Since Leafpool and Crowfeather's relationship is maybe the most memorable thing about this book, I felt it necessary to depict it. I originally wanted to draw the two running together, but I didn't want to spoil that they would run from the clans, so instead I drew them sitting together with Leafpool glancing over her shoulder to imply that she is maybe a little afraid, a little unsure, to highlight the fact that it's a forbidden romance trademark. Leafpool and Crowfeather being together already got revealed in the last book, so it doesn't really spoil anything but has tension to it. I like that. And finally, there's the cover for Sunset. I obviously had to draw the final scene, but I definitely did not want to spoil it, so I only showed Brambleclaw's paws in the bloody lake, not revealing whom the blood belongs to. This way I'm not revealing Hogfarth's betrayal or whether or not Brambleclaw decides to kill Firestar. I actually think that this cover could mislead some unsuspecting reader to believe that Brambleclaw would turn evil, which I think is fun because that is an actual conflict in the book. So that's all of my redesigns. Let me know what you think, whether you think my ideas were good or whether they were bad or too spoilery. And also let me know what you think about the real covers and if you think there are some covers that are actually worse than the New Prophecy ones.